Well, hey everyone, I want to welcome Lisa Fields to the program today. Lisa is the founder of the Jude 3 Project. And Lisa, tell us just a little bit about yourself and your organization.
Yeah, Lisa Fields, lead the Jude 3 Project. Just recently moved to the DC area. The Jude 3 Project is a Christian apologetics organization focusing on helping Black Christians specifically know what they believe and why they believe it. We do this in a number of ways, through curriculum, through conferences, through multimedia, documentaries, etc.
Okay, cool. And so what year did you found it?
In 2014.
2014. Okay, what led you to think this was a need?
Yeah, so it really was my undergrad experience. I had a crisis of faith. Um, in undergrad, I took a New Testament course. Thought it would be like Sunday school as an elective. It was not. Our textbook was Bart Ehrman, who is a New Testament
Oh,
scholar
yes,
at
I've heard of
university.
him.
Yes.
Hmm.
And so he's definitely not a Christian. So it rocked my world. And I struggled with like what I believed and if I should continue to be a Christian. My father introduced me to apologetics, got immersed in apologetics, but didn't see anybody like me in apologetics.
Mm.
And so wanted to curate a space or create an organization that helped bridge that gap for the African American context within apologetics.
Hmm. That's so cool to hear, just because I have a similar passion recently in that I've really gotten into apologetics in the past couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
partially, in response to seeing so many friends, family members that have gone through deconstruction or have, kind of like lost their faith because of things like similar to what you went through. And so I love seeing sort of this resurgence of apologetics. I feel like there are more organizations that are being formed, or just more conversations that are being had, and people getting educated in ways that they haven't before. So I totally love that. Now you host a number of different things. So one of the things that you do is you host these things called Courageous Conversations that
Yes.
feature prominent Black scholars from different theological perspectives. And these theological differences, sometimes, I don't know if you do a lot of Twitter, but man, it gets crazy on Twitter.
Yeah.
But why do you think it's so important that you're offering the theology from a wide variety of views?
Yeah, because I think we all live with blind spots.
Hmm.
And if we're with people that have if we're in spaces with people who have our same blind spots, they're not going to be able to help us see them. And it's usually when we're taken out of the places that make us comfortable that our beliefs are challenged. And the challenges shouldn't take away our convictions, but strengthen them if they're biblical convictions that are based in truth. Truth only gets strengthened when challenged. It can't
Mm.
be destroyed when challenged because it is the truth.
Oh,
So
that's such a good point.
if what you believe is true, it should be able to stand up to scrutiny. And so I believe that a faith that can't be tested can't be trusted. And so we should constantly be putting the things that we think are true under a microscope. And I believe putting them in spaces with people who think differently should help strengthen and refine that belief. And I also think it's a reflection of it's an outworking of love to be able to sit with a person who doesn't share your convictions and be able to speak to them with respect and still hold your conviction, but still engage them with truth and love.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And you can say that about, even if we're talking beyond theology, just, general issues of truth, these days. I think that's such an important point. Um, Now, faith and politics these days, like, you really can't avoid them overlapping in some way, like sometimes in really negative ways. Um, and believers in the past, I don't know, 5-6 years, I mean, there's been a lot of division, just for all kinds of different reasons. Just from your perspective, looking at this from someone that, is in this space a little bit here, how do you think we can find a way to stay unified even as we have all of these different perspectives?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be easy. I think unity is something that doesn't happen without kind of war in a sense. And I'm not talking about, going to war in the,
Right.
but people have to know where you stand in order to have unity, or you suppress your identity to accommodate others, which isn't unity. That is more uniformity. And so I think true unity is people being able to stand in their convictions, stand on their beliefs, and find some way to work together. I don't think we have a lot of examples of that in our culture. And I think that's why it's hard to model, because there's just so few people doing that. And I think because of social media, people struggle to say things directly to people or to hold their convictions in person. They feel more comfortable behind the screen.
Yeah, I agree. It's made people shameless sometimes, like overly bold sometimes. But I mean, it seems like you're doing this in a sense, like you're bringing together these different perspectives. And I mean, those can be pretty deep sometimes when we're talking about faith issues. And we're doing this summit for this interview series. We're talking about civility and, the combination of all of these things together. So when you hear that word civility, what comes to mind for you? And do you think it's an important concept for Christians to be living out?
Yeah, when I think of civility, I think of Jesus.
Mm.
Um, you know, I think about how it must have felt to be Jesus for the first 30 years of his life, to hear people talking about him, or to talking about God, which Jesus got in the flesh, be talking about God and having probably misrepresenting God or misunderstanding, and
Mm-hmm.
him not taking on every battle, but taking a posture of listening and trying to build a relationship with people when he had the answer. But he understood time. He understood the proper perspective, that it wasn't his time to show people that he was God in the flesh yet. So he just was on earth for 30 years, living and dwelling amongst us, seeing what it's like to be us. And I think civility is a real incarnational ministry in which you understand that you don't have to necessarily, just because you know the right answer, say that at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
That you can enter in conversation and listen and get to know people and build rapport. And I think that creates civility, and mutual
Yeah.
respect.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Like you don't have to say, like, just, you don't have to always have to tell someone you think they're wrong. You don't always have to say your opinion right away.
Mhm.
Like, it's like what is the I'm trying to think of a quote. It's not coming to my head, but just about being quiet, basically,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
keeping your mouth shut there for a little bit, being a listener, seeing where people are coming from. I love your description of that. Now you started this organization in 2014. A
Mhm.
lot has happened since then.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I feel like I mean, obviously things have always been, politics has always been crazy, but I just feel like there's been an even crazierness since then. How have you seen things change, just looking at it from your perspective now? What's changed? What's getting better? What's getting worse? Do you have any thoughts on what's going to happen in the future?
Yeah, I think the thing that's getting worse, are we that we're leaning into extremes.
Mm-hmm.
So we lean into extremes to double down on our positions, but we also lean into extremes to demonize our opposition.
Mm-hmm.
And so we take the worst example of our opposition and use that to create a narrative that sometimes doesn't speak to where the majority of people are. And so the
Yeah.
arguments and the responses just are to extremes, and not to where most people find themselves somewhere in the middle,
Yeah.
but the extremes are the loudest. And
Right.
so the extremes end up coming up with solutions that aren't reflective of the majority. And so I think that's what continues to get worse, that the people that want civility start being quiet, and the people that want unrest just turn the volume up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the greatest challenges that I'm seeing, and it continues to get worse.
Outside of your organization, like, do you see anyone doing it well? Do you see anyone that's working on that to make the middle middleman, I guess, middle ground people like more vocal, more visible?
Yeah, so I think Justin Giboney in the AND campaign is doing a great
Yes, I'm
job.
gonna be chatting with him. I love Justin.
Yeah, so I sit on the board of the AND campaign, and so I'm just excited about the work that Justin is doing, calling for civility, calling for conviction and compassion. And so I'm just thankful for him and his hard work and diligence. And I think
Mm-hmm.
AND campaign is a prime example of that work. Also, my friend Michael Ware, uh,
Mm-hmm.
he's doing great work in this space. So I think people are trying to gain traction in this space, and I think those two, Justin and Michael has a newer organization as well. I'm excited for what they're able to do in the future.
Yes, I love the End campaign. I love listening to their podcast and just getting Justin's wisdom on so many things. Really, I always tell people you got to listen to this. Like, this is the one podcast on like politics and faith, like that really gets it. So I'm with you on that. And then I also wanted to ask you, just I'm very personally interested. I saw you had this series called Why I Don't Go, about
Mhm.
not going to church. And I don't remember if I mentioned this, but I actually have a book coming out next month. It's called Reason to Return: Why Women Need the Church and the Church Needs Women. And a lot of that is a lot of research I've done on like why people are leaving church and like why the local church matters. And so when I saw this series, I was like, oh, I have to ask her about this. So where did your idea for this come from? And like, what have you learned from it?
Yeah, so it was really just a series of conversations I've had with peers who no longer come to church,
Mm-hmm.
no longer go to church. And I was like, what if I curated a space that was on camera that people could see? Because people connect with stories. They
Mm-hmm.
see the stats of people leaving the church, but they connect with stories and individuals, and hearing their story on camera and roundtable discussions is very powerful.
Yeah.
And I said, what if I just listen to them for an hour? I don't try to respond and give them reasons why they should come to church. I just listen to their story. And so it was really my best friend, Corey Porter, who curated the questions for me to help me to, because she worked with a lot of campus ministry, and she was better at it than me as it relates to engaging. And so she curated 5 questions for me that helped me really be able to kind of open them up.
Mm-hmm.
And they listened. I mean, I listened to them, and I really
Mm-hmm.
heard like what they had to say. And then we did they were like, for the first season, we did the listening part first. And then they were like, well, we want some questions answered from you. And so came back and filmed the Q&A. And I brought
Mm-hmm.
along 2 other apologists with me to answer their questions. And they really enjoyed that. And I realized that people are more open to listen to you when you listen to them first.
Oh yeah, that's such a
And
great point.
And when we were answering their questions, they were like, oh, reconsidering faith, reconsidering the Bible, reconsidering church, because I gave them a space to be heard. And then
Mm.
they had a space to get their questions answered. And so we did a Jacksonville series, because I'm from Jacksonville and I lived there for most of my life. And then we did a DC series, and we're going to do a Seattle series. And the goal is to do them in every major city, because every region has kind of a different feel as to what what people are thinking,
Right.
why they turn away. And
Mm.
I think I'm excited about that.
I
What comes
love
from
it. Do you have your Q&As on your YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta go watch those. I'm very curious what they asked you. What is there anything that stands out to you that you were surprised by, or anything that you've learned from listening to them?
One of the things that was a question that came that I asked them, because this was a thought. This wasn't the question my friend gave me, but it was a thought after hearing older people talk about why younger people don't go. And I said, a lot of older people say you don't go because you want to sin, so you left church so you could sin in peace. And when the guy said, I was sinning while I was at church, I didn't need to leave church to sin.
Right.
It was like I left because stuff started. He had some abusive leaders. His questions weren't being answered. he felt like he had to check his brain at the door. He was like, I feel like it's negligent and irresponsible to say I left just because I wanted to sin.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're
It
all sinning
oversimplifies the
there.
problem. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
And so I thought that was really insightful. One
Mhm.
girl said that she spent her whole life in church. We actually posted this on our social, this clip. She spent her whole life in church and she doesn't know if she gained anything from it.
Mm,
Like she still doesn't know how to engage other faiths, like how to give a defense for Christianity. And I think
mm.
a lot of people are there. They spent their life and they're like, still don't know what Christianity is.
And you're like, welcome to Jude 3 Project.
Yeah.
I got some stuff to share with you.
Yeah. So I think those things, are insightful and I think helpful for people to know because they have a lot of assumptions but they don't do go back and listen or interview the people that left. They
Mm,
sometimes get offended or feel like, God help them or,
right.
whatever, but they don't go back and do that. I like to say it's like quality control.
Mm,
When you're in corporate, they're doing this like it's so
yeah.
I think the church could do a better job of that.
Yeah, I agree. And I, like I said, when I saw your series, I was immediately like, this is such a good idea. I'm so glad she did this. Just from your perspective, what would you say, about why, being a member of a church or a local church is important, or what would you have to say about that today?
Yeah, I think it provides community. It's not just about getting the word and growing. Obviously, you grow in discipleship, but we cannot grow as Christians without other Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting. The first question we asked is why if to be a part of community, to leave a community, you had to be a part of the community. Is there anything you liked about your church? And every single person said the community. And part of the reason they left was community. But
Mm,
speaks to the fact that community is hard over time
mm-hmm.
because we're all human beings and we're all going to frustrate each other over time. And so I think we cannot be mature Christians without other Christians. And
Yeah.
that's why the church is important. You can read the Bible in isolation, you can pray in isolation, but you will not grow as a disciple without the community of believers. Because there are some things, some growth that you need that can only be found in community with others.
I
And so
love
you will
that.
always be stunted in your growth without other people to help you see the things in you that you miss.
All right. I love that. You had so many good little words there that I want to remember. Thank you so much, Lisa. How can people get involved if they want to be a part of Jude 3?
Yeah, they could get involved by going to our website, jude3project.org, or following us on all social media at Jude3Project.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time, and I loved hearing about what you do.
Thank you, Erica. I enjoyed it.